Hi, and welcome to a new tutorial. Signal splitting can be sometimes the solution to achieve a certain result or a huge playground for creative ideas. Some methods are quite popular and easy to set up, others more of a secret and just used by the ones who know. I like to show you in this video how to achieve these different types of splitting methods with native plugins only. But we will not have enough time to go too much into detail. If you like to learn more about these techniques or perhaps struggle to apply them, please drop me a message in the comments that I can perhaps do a question and answer video afterwards. For those who still didn't, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like to support my work, you find the links in the description for my Patreon site. This is the place where I will upload all patcher presets as well I create in this video free to download for everybody. So let's get started. The most popular and probably the most obvious technique to split your signal is called multiband. But let's be more precise. What is often called a multiband is actually frequency splitting. Frequency splitting makes of course just sense with signals which contain data in a wider range of the frequency spectrum. For a single sine wave, there is not much to split frequency-wise. The most popular devices frequency splitting was used for are multiband dynamic plugins, like in our case a multiband compressor or Maximus. Frequency splitting is done by a few parallel low and high pass filters, which outputs are then separately routed to individual processors to treat just the frequency range they are set to, instead of the whole signal. This makes sense especially for dynamic processors, as the nature of sound, respectively our hearing, dictates that low frequency signals carry much more volume than higher frequencies. As a dynamic processor reacts to the incoming volume of the signal, means that it's hard to treat more the high frequencies, as the process got always triggered by dominantly the lower parts. That caused hard times for especially master engineers who didn't have access to the individual channels, but just had to work with a single rendered file, where perhaps this idea of multiband processing via frequency splitting was born, or better developed further from tricks they already used to restrict the detection circle of a compressor to the higher frequencies. And left the lower frequencies untouched. But it got more and more clear which huge creative potential frequency splitting has got. While working with the specialized multiband plugin offers a great and simple workflow, it is nevertheless restricted to the included processors. Luckily these days we have a bunch of ways how to set up our own frequency splits very easily and treat the signal in whatever way we like. In FL Studio, the most important plugin for doing so was released not long ago, and I can 100% recommend getting used to this plugin only when setting up custom multiband chains in FL Studio, the frequency splitter. It is the best and most advanced frequency splitting plugin on the whole market, and we can be really proud of it. And perhaps it's a good idea to make a video just on this one, as it's really important to know this body inside out and really understand the way it works. Please tell me in the comments if you're interested in a video like that. We can use the frequency splitter either on the mixer tracks themselves and route the splitted bands to individual channels, or what I prefer, to set up my custom frequency splits in Patcher. Disconnect the main out, activate as many sends as needed, send the individual bands out, and set the bands to the frequencies you like. Now you can add as many plugins you like to the individual chains to fulfill all your creative needs. The second most popular splitting method is mid-side processing. This technique is applicable for signals which have stereo information, means differences between the left and the right channel. Differences between the left and the right channel, or just saying stereo, can make our signal sounding huge and wide. But even in modern times, we do have to worry about monocompatibility. Many people are listening music on mobile devices, which speakers, even if they have a stereo system, are that close together that the signal nearly sums up to a mono stream before they reach our ears. Subwoofer systems sum everything below a certain threshold to mono, and especially in the low frequencies, problems get obvious very easily. Mid-side processing is mostly needed for EQs to battle against problems which can occur when summing stereo information to mono. But of course, even for this splitting method, there's plenty of room for creative use. Many FL Studio users are claiming they would need a mid-side operation mode for the PEQ2. And I'm pretty sure this will come in version 3, which was already announced in a side note by the officials. But honestly, I'm not sure for myself if I will not continue my work in the old way. The native plugin for mid-side splitting is the Stereo Shaper plugin, here in Patcher, but it works the same way directly in the mixer if you prefer to work in there. We need a new send output on the plugin. And there's already a preset we can use under Mixing, Mid A-Side Splitter. I don't know why this is pointing to the second send by default. I just changed it here to send 1. This preset sends out of the main output just the mid information, means the pure mono signal, which you would hear when summing the signal to mono in the mixer. This is the information which is equal between the left and the right channel, indicated in the correlation meter by a steady reading at +1. The send channel carries just the side signal, means everything which is different between the left and the right channel. This is the information which get completely lost when summing to mono. Please don't get confused that this sounds very mono-ish at the moment. This happens due to the technical process behind it, but isn't noticeable that way afterwards. When combining both channels, we end up with the same signal as before. Now we can add, for instance, 2 PEQ2s, Open the GUIs by holding Alt, and we have now one which is just working on the mono signal and one which is just operating on the stereo signal. One last change. As we don't see the analyzer on the side EQ, we need to go into the menu and change the monitor input from mid to side. You can save your creation as a preset, or just use the existing one, which has got the only difference that the side channel is here on top. Now, for example, we can filter out all low-end information on the sides to monoize the low end. We can increase the sides on certain bands to make it even wider sounding. To not gain too much volume, we can decrease the same spots on the mids. I personally like better to have the mids and sides in separate plugin windows for easy and fast tweaks. Instead of having all in one window and need to set every single band to the wished mode. Easily running out of available bands. Feel free to experiment with other plugin types as well and let your imagination run wild with different settings, different plugins, whatever you like. The next method to split a signal is actually quite obvious, but you will probably need it just in rare cases. Left-right splitting. It can be handy to fix certain problems when mixing with signals which have big and perhaps sometimes unwished differences in the left and right channel, like extreme different volume of frequencies. For creating a left-right split, we need this time two instances of the stereo shaper and name them properly. In the instance for the left channel, we leave the left channel volume at 100%, means 0 dB. But we set the right channel to -infinity. Please be careful that this position is in the middle, not on the bottom. By muting the other instance, we have the signal just in our left channel. And we do the opposite on the second instance. For building an EQ for left-right processing, I insert PEQ2s on both chains. Open the GUIs and set their monitor input accordingly. Left to left, right to right. Playing everything unprocessed, we end up with the same result like without dispatcher active. Again, save this patch to have it always available. But now you have the option to treat the signal differently, either to fix problems or to be creative. What about two different gating rhythms on the left and right? Last but not least, there is a very secret method of splitting signals we can achieve in different ways in FL Studio. Splitting by transients. I often see people recommending the Haas effect, for example on two mono-sounding hi-hat lines. I'm sorry, but this is absolutely bullshit. Please don't follow this advice at all. There are so many great possibilities available, and the Haas effect is by far the worst. The Haas effect is basically a short delay on just the left or the right side of the signal, which tricks our ears to believe this would be stereo now. It's very simple to set up in FL Studio by using again the stereo shaper. and turning the delay knob to one side by a few milliseconds. It's quick and easy to set up because it's a cheap way of doing so. But watch what happens to your hi-hats if somebody listens on, for example, a mobile device or anywhere where this person receives just a mono signal. The short delay used for the stereo effect is now just a delay, ruining the whole sound. Not only the volume drops by nearly 6 dB, but there is a strange drrrt effect on the transient. Or it starts flanging when adjusting the delay time. The Haas effect isn't mono-compatible at all, and one should be very careful to use it. If you have really no other chance, at least do not use it on sharp transients, as the delay effect would be too noticeable that way when listening in mono. This is where transient splitting comes in handy, and with such a short signal like this, I personally would go with the most obvious and basic method, as it simply works best in this case. I just duplicate the track 2 times, thanks to our new clone track feature. This way I can keep the original track and can experiment with the newly created ones. I set for the transient track the envelope very short. On the track for the body, I just raised the attack a bit to eliminate the first transient. Sure, this is not the most precise and scientific way, and playing them together might have changed the sound a tiny bit, but for my taste not in a bad way. And now I can leave my transient alone, while applying the Haas effect just on the body, which doesn't give me a perfect mono result neither, but for my hearing a far better result than treating the whole signal like before. In the next video I will go over the proper ways to make your sounds as wide as you like, but staying mono-compatible. There are so many great ways to overtake exact control of what is happening to your signals, and there are very good plugins as well which provide you 100% clear mono sound. So please say already goodbye to the term Haas effect, as you will never need it again. Furthermore, transient splitting can be used for sound design as well. I used here 2 instances of the transient processor to isolate the transient of that bass from the sustaining part. By setting the split frequency and split balance to my liking. Now I put the delay and the reverb on just the transient, leaving the rest alone. When I compare this result to treating the whole signal instead, it's a massive difference. The settings are of course a bit overdriven to make the differences more obvious, but on the version which treats just the transient, the result is much more precise against the wishy-washy sound of the second version. Or how about adding some additional rhythms for just the transient? Again, compared to the mess this causes on treating the whole signal. And even cutting out the lows does create a complete different result, but not necessarily what I had in mind. The effect just on the transient is much more clear, more defined. So here you have it. 4 different signal splitting techniques done natively in FL Studio with a really high, if not ultimate flexibility, but a quite simple and easy workflow. Don't forget, most of these you just have to set up once. When saved, it's simple preset recalling and everything is done in a sec. That's it for today. Please let me know in the comments if you'd like me to go more in depth into these different methods. And head over to my Patreon site to grab the presets which are free for everybody to download. Have a good time, stay tuned, and thank you for watching.